The barking started before sunrise. Ben was pouring coffee when he heard it, sharp, insistent, coming from the pasture beyond the barn. His old border collie, Daisy, never barked without reason. She was the kind of dog that saved her voice for things that mattered. He stepped out onto the porch, mug in hand, the cold biting his skin. Daisy stood near the fence line, tail stiff, head low. Her bark had changed. Not alarm. Not anger. Something else. Ben grabbed his coat and walked across the frosted grass. When he got closer, he saw what she was guarding. Curled in the ditch, tangled in burrs and half hidden under a scrap of wire, was a tiny coyote pup. Its fur was matted, ribs showing, eyes dull. It looked barely old enough to stand. Daisy whined softly and looked up at him, then back at the pup. Ben frowned. "Girl, what have you found?" The pup tried to crawl away but couldn't. It made a small, broken sound. He hesitated. Coyotes and livestock didn't mix. He'd lost lambs to them before. Instinct said to walk away. But Daisy didn't move. She just stayed there, ears back, pressing herself low to the ground as if to say, "It's hurt. Help it." Ben sighed, set his coffee in the dirt, and knelt. "All right then." He slipped off his gloves and reached for the wire. The metal had caught around the pup's hind leg, cutting deep into the skin. It must have been trapped all night. The wound was raw, but not beyond saving. Ben pulled the wire loose while Daisy hovered close, whining under her breath. When the pup was free, it tried to stand, then collapsed again, exhausted. "Easy," Ben murmured. "No one's gonna hurt you." He wrapped it in his jacket and carried it to the barn. Daisy trotted beside him the whole way, eyes fixed on the bundle in his arms. Inside, he laid the pup on a blanket in the hay. It trembled, blinking against the light. Daisy lay down next to it, close enough for warmth but not touching. Ben cleaned the wound, poured water into a bowl, and watched as the pup sniffed, then drank. He told himself it was only for a night. Once it could walk, he'd let it go. But the night turned into 3. By the end of the week, the pup was stronger. It followed Daisy everywhere, out to the fields, around the pens, even to the porch. Daisy treated it like it was one of her own. She'd nudge it toward food, block it gently when it wandered too far, curl around it when the wind picked up. Ben tried not to get attached. "You can't stay here, little one," he said more than once. But Daisy would tilt her head at him, as if she'd already made the decision. Neighbors warned him it was a bad idea. Coyotes grew fast, wild and clever. But whenever he looked at the pup limping after Daisy through the tall grass, he couldn't bring himself to chase it off. The pup learned to play. It would hide behind fence posts and spring out when Daisy passed, yipping in delight. Daisy, patient as ever, would feint and circle, tail wagging slow. Sometimes Ben would catch them lying together under the old oak at dusk. The sun catching in their fur, black and silver, side by side like mother and child. He didn't know it then, but those quiet evenings would stay with him for the rest of his life. Summer passed. The pup grew taller, leaner. The limp faded. One morning, it was simply gone. No sign, no tracks. Daisy searched for days, nose down, circling the fields, calling softly. Ben watched her from the porch, heart heavy. "She'll come back," he told her, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to comfort. The next day he found the pup's trail leading toward the foothills, back into the wild. He stood there for a long time, hand resting on Daisy's back. "That's where you belong, little one," he said quietly. Daisy kept looking, but she didn't bark for her again. Life went back to its rhythm. Chores, lambing, fences, storms. Seasons rolled by. Daisy grew older. Her muzzle turned gray. She moved slower, slept longer. Ben noticed her pause sometimes at the edge of the pasture, staring toward the hills. Her ears would lift at faint sounds only she could hear. Then she'd wag her tail once, softly, and walk back to him. Years passed that way. Until one autumn morning, just as the first frost dusted the grass, Daisy began barking again. Ben stepped outside, expecting stray cattle or a fox. But Daisy wasn't facing the barn this time. She was looking toward the ridge. He followed her gaze and froze. There, standing in the pale light, was a coyote. Full-grown. Fur thick and silvered along the spine, eyes the same amber gold as that half-starved pup he'd once carried into the barn. It didn't run. It didn't bare its teeth. It just stood watching them. Daisy barked again, sharp, excited. Then again softer. The coyote tilted its head, ears twitching, and stepped forward a few paces before stopping at the fence line. For a moment the two just looked at each other, the wind stirring between them. Then movement caught his eye. Ben's throat tightened. "Well, I'll be," he whispered. Behind the coyote, half hidden in the grass, a smaller shape stumbled out. A tiny pup, awkward on its feet, blinking against the morning sun. The adult nudged it gently forward, toward the fence. Daisy went still, tail wagging once before she lowered her head. The coyote pup sniffed the air, then sat down beside its mother. None of them moved for a long time. It was as if the world had stopped breathing. Then the adult coyote turned its gaze toward Ben, steady, calm, and unafraid. For a second he thought he saw something in those eyes he couldn't name. Recognition, maybe? Gratitude. He gave a low yip, almost like a bark, and nudged its pup back toward the hills. Daisy watched them go, tail swaying slowly, eyes bright. At the crest of the ridge, the coyote stopped once more and looked back. The pup did the same. Then both vanished into the wild grass. Ben rested a hand on Daisy's head. "You did good, girl," he murmured. The morning felt heavier somehow, but not sad. That night, Daisy lay beside the porch, ears twitching in her sleep. The wind carried faint howls from far off in the hills. Ben looked out across the fields, where the stars trembled faintly over the horizon. Somewhere beyond them, two wild eyes watched back. A reminder of the day an old farm dog had chosen kindness over instinct, and changed his life forever.